Hello. What is up, everyone? Welcome to the first episode of Puke's podcast. I am your host. My name is Puke. I'm taking too many pauses. Hello. What is up, everyone? Welcome to episode 1 of Puke's podcast. I am your host. My name is Puke. And yes, there is a story behind that name. Will we get into it today? We'll see. So right off the bat, I want to tell you guys that I'm super thankful for having you here. I'm going to be doing this a little bit different than how I've planned. I know that this video is, or this podcast rather, is coming out later than I said that it would, and that is because of the video aspect of it. I'll explain along the way, but basically I have a little script here, and I'm going to read off of that, and then I'm going to elaborate on it. So this is going to keep me on task, and then I'll be able to talk directly to you guys. All right, let's get into it. Some of you probably already know me. That's who my initial audience is going to be. Hi, everybody. But maybe this is years down the line, and I'm on season 6 or something, and you're a fan who decided to go back and listen to it all the way from the beginning. Whatever the case may be, thank you for checking this out. This podcast is something that I've been talking about doing for so many years. I've tried multiple times to get this off the ground and recorded many, many versions of this first episode. Yeah, including multiple just this week. None of them saw the light of day for various reasons. Since I'm pretty good at riffing on a topic just off the dome, that's how I originally thought that this should be done. Just set up a microphone and a camera, hit record, and then figure it out in the editing. But when I would get to the editing part, there was always some reason why I hated it. Either my voice, or my face, or my delivery, or the camera quality, or the background. I always had some excuse to scrap it and give up. And that is very much the case. That happened even after I wrote this. That happened. I get to the editing process and I'm like, what the hell am I doing? And it was the video that was really throwing me off because I was approaching it kind of like way over the top YouTube video style. Like I did friggin' jazz hands in my intro, you guys. Hello. I did one of those. Okay. So I had to remind myself, like, this is a podcast first and foremost. This isn't anything that's supposed to be way over the top. Some reason why I hated it, either my voice. Nobody really likes the sound of their own voice that much. My face, I've struggled with some complexion issues. And even when I was like ready to go, like if this was just a regular podcast, if this was a radio or something, it wouldn't matter how many spots I had on my face. My delivery, like I said, being way too over the top. The camera quality, I don't know why I was stressing over that so much. My plan here is just start out small and then get better as we go along. When I first started filming this, it was on an iPhone, I think. I think it was an iPhone 8. That's how long ago I started trying to do this. The background. So I'm at my studio right now, and this is the green room, basically. I thought about making it the control room, but this is where bands would hang out before their show. And there's still a lot of work to be done in here. Obviously, it's not green. And one of these consoles is going to be ending up at front of house very soon. Okay. Always had some excuse to scrap it and give up. But then it wouldn't take long for me to start thinking about podcasting again. See, I heard many times growing up that I should be on the radio. And I was interested in getting into broadcasting, but then this whole internet thing sort of took off. By the time YouTube was launched, and then the first podcasts, I was definitely feeling the itch, but waited and didn't hop on that train yet, obviously. Honestly, I had been hoping that a bigger music career might open up for me, and I could see this trend toward artists becoming content creators. That's not something that was appealing to me, but I could see how it was working for some folks. And now everybody is a content creator. Now somehow art and content are synonymous, where I would have thought that one was maybe a little bit higher on the scales than the other, but now when you can Just plug in a prompt and have a robot do it, right? What's really art anymore? We'll get to that. I left the country for a bit and toured around the UK and Europe for a couple years, then came back and a band finally manifested. The music career actually looked promising there for a minute. I got my own apartment. I turned it into a recording studio and started throwing concerts in my front yard. Not much of a yard, it was all concrete. I figured it would also be a great location to do the pod format and checked to see if there was any public interest. So yeah, I reached out on social media and was like, I'm thinking of starting a podcast about music. Would anybody watch it? And so many people were like, yeah. And I was not expecting that at all. So I was like, shit, now I got to do it. When the pandemic hit, it seemed like maybe that was some kind of sign to go for it. I tried it out, filming in my apartment, attempting to do this whole thing in one take. And then, just like I said, started editing and was like, nope, this ain't it. I would try going off the dome, just riffing. I would get to the end of it. I'm like, oh man, I didn't talk about this and this and this, which I thought were important. So I made a little outline, and then I would have the outline on the other, just on the other side of the camera. The outline was somewhat helpful, but sometimes I would elaborate, sometimes I wouldn't. I don't know. So then I decided, that's why I came up with the script, just give myself the actual words and stick to the script. Like, well, I have a little bit of a thespian background, so doing a script should be fairly easy, but I was definitely not going to memorize it. And even going line by line and delivering it multiple ways and then trying to edit out the ones that I didn't like and use the best take like I would as a producer or audio engineer, that didn't work either. So this is what we settled on. I'm reading the script and then I do a little riffing. All right, so then I ended up opening Audio Wild Studios in the middle of Idlewild, a tiny California town located on a big mountain. And I was like, okay, now we've got the right spot. Let's do this. And tried filming episode 1 multiple times over the years. I've been here now since March of 2021, and I've probably recorded this episode at least a dozen times. But I know myself pretty well, folks. Sometimes the only way to get it done is to have your back against the wall. So I've filmed a teaser video saying that this episode was coming out before the new year. It probably would have been smart to already have the episode in the can before I go promoting it online, but that was not the case. In fact, I filmed it after I posted the promo. Had really no idea where I was going to film it, how I was going to do it. I've tried multiple things, obviously, and I decided to just put it out there so I could hold myself accountable, and I'm already past the deadline. So, a wise woman once said, all we have is the here and now, which is why procrastination feels so right. I think that was Ellen. Anyway, all of that is done now. This is finally hitting the airwaves, and I am super stoked to get into it. Okay, first, I wanted to let you know that this is not meant to always be some kind of solo talking head kind of pod. Definitely not. The whole idea is to be doing interviews. I figured this first episode should be a bit of a refresher course on yours truly for those that already know me and have been anxiously awaiting this episode, and also an introduction for those who are like, who the hell is this guy and why do I care about another damn podcast? I thought that was a good idea, I was like, I'll interview myself basically for the first one. Not literally, that would be a little schizophrenic. But, I'll tell kind of my story so that way people will know more about me and actually be interested in the podcast, possibly. Maybe it will give some sort of validation for the credentials that I have or something. And I wondered, I was like, why does nobody do this? And it's probably because usually it's like a celebrity that gets the podcast and that's why you're watching it. It's kind of not a nobody, and you're going to watch the nobody podcast because they get bigger guests. I thought about concentrating on guests first. I filmed episode 1 not as just me talking about me. I filmed episode 1 with Miss Kelly Black. She's a photographer, music photographer in the industry. Amazing person, lived in Idlewild for a little while. We worked together at not really a restaurant, I guess like a cafe kind of thing up here. She had so many great stories. So I was like, you know what? You would be the perfect first person for me to interview. And I had no idea what I was doing. And I still have that. I still have that interview. It might see the light of day. We will probably have to redo that, Kelly. Sorry. And then there was a zine that I was working on, Idlewild Rocks magazine. That was like a year ago, I think, a year or so, a year and a half maybe. The idea was basically to come out with a local music zine for the town of Idlewild. It was a good idea. There was a lot of support. There was a lot of interest. I got a team together, but ultimately I wasn't really in a great place mentally to be able to do that. And I'm not super ashamed to say, only slightly, but I had a full-blown meltdown, you guys. Like, I lost it. So issue 0 came out. Issue 1 never did. It was done pretty much. It was way, way late, but there wasn't enough funds to be able to print it. So that ended up on the back burner. And I was like, well, I can do it just as an online newsletter or something, but I really wanted a print magazine. And I can be very uncompromising at times. So now I'm realizing why people don't do the first episode as an introduction for themselves. It is excruciating, especially trying to edit my own face, my own voice, my own everything. Like, I hate it, you guys. It sucks. And I understand why everybody has a team that does this, because then they don't have to be the one editing it. They're going to be like, why don't you go look at my face and listen to my voice for however many hours this takes, and I'll go do something else and give you the thumbs up when you send me something to approve. That's not how this is going right now, folks. This is a one-man show. I don't have any sponsors or anything right now. If you would like to hear this voice advertise your product or your service or whatever it may be, go ahead and get at me. Right now, I'm just advertising, I don't know, whatever's on camera. And the Idlewild Church of Divine Vibes, which we'll get to. By the way, Jeff, if you're watching this, Adams, this isn't the embroidered hat. This is a silkscreen hat. So you still have the original. Don't worry. Okay. Oh yeah, refresher course for those of you who already know me, because some of y'all acting like you forgot. And an introduction for those who are like, who the hell is this guy and why do I care about another damn podcast? Very good question. And this is the exact same one that I've been asking myself over the years and why I have been hesitant to even do this. But that ends now. This is mainly going to be a pod about music and the music industry, where it is headed, if it will even still exist in a few years' time, and hopefully provide you with the inspiration and information that will help you navigate this whole thing. Like, that's just one sentence, you guys. How was I going to delete? Like, that took so many tries. I should have just read it from the beginning. Yeah, about music, the music industry, where it's headed, will it even still exist in a few years' time? That's a big thing, you guys. And hopefully provide you with inspiration and information that will help you navigate this whole thing. And that's why I wanted to do the introduction, because it's like, I'm clearly not a famous guy in the industry, so why should anybody give a shit what I have to say about it? A lot of music podcasts already exist, like a lot. And if I thought that all the ground had already been covered, then you would not be hearing and or seeing me right now. I subscribe to a lot of these pods, and they are cool and all, but I don't feel like most of them speak to me or give me all that much insight. That's kind of because I have a certain amount of experience in the industry, so there's a certain amount that I already know, and a lot of these podcasts they seem to be geared towards people who are just starting out and like really have no idea what to do to be seen or be heard or, you know, anything like that. So that's not geared towards me. And then the other thing is that it seems like it's normally geared towards like a completely different genre, a completely different kind of person. You know, there I'll see a podcast title come out and it's like how this unknown person got 150,000 streams in a month with no label support and blah, 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 blah. And then you go to watch it and it's like a super hot 22-year-old girl with like, you know what I mean? Like that is not going to work for everybody. It's just not. Like if you look like Lemmy, you know what I mean? You're not going to be able to follow this like cookie cutter pop princess formula that other people are selling. It's just not going to work. And the other thing is some of them, not all of them still exist, but around the pandemic, pre-pandemic, there were some that were hosted by like famous managers and stuff in the business, right? And that's cool. They have insight. They're accomplished, you know. They have an impressive roster and they don't need new clients at all. And they are doing just fine for themselves, right? But then you ask them a question like, should I get CDs made? Should I do singles or should I focus on the album? And they will give really bad advice. They'll be like, oh, don't even worry about physical media. Bro, I don't even have a CD player in my car. Oh. Like, yeah, I'm sure you drive something very nice that just hooks up to your phone or your watch or your implant or whatever it is that you got going on. And the rest of us are probably driving something a little bit older that maybe does have a CD player. Maybe it has a cassette player in it. You know what I mean? Like, read the room. Not everybody is going to see it from that angle. And you're not really going to be able to tell the up and coming folks when you're at that level what they're going to need to be able to get to the next level. You might be able to tell them what they need to get to the level that all your clients are at, but that might not be the level that they themselves are looking for. So there's a way to step it up, and there should be like a universal way of doing that instead of like focusing on a certain genre or a certain whatever. And that's not really their fault. Their shows aren't going to be able to appeal to every single genre that exists in music today. It's just a fact that the mainstream music industry is a different beast than the underground scene. And it seems like most of the pods out there are for the mainstream, or at the very least for the indie crowd. But I like heavy ass shit. I get down with new wave and jazz and funk and soul and hip hop, but the stuff I listen to the most is usually labeled by others as aggressive music. That type of music hadn't made a comeback yet, and had more of a niche audience when pods took off. So maybe there aren't as many pods about it because it wasn't as safe a bet to take when people were trying to figure out what they wanted to podcast about. So it's like, you know, what am I trying to say there? Rock music was pretty much dead. When podcasts and YouTube and all that stuff hit, which was like mid 2000s and then started to get really popular by like 2010, rock music was on the decline. Hip hop was ruling the charts. And there was really not a whole lot of interest in people trying to do a rock career. So there weren't going to be a whole lot of podcasts about like, hey, this is how you're going to be a rock star. Instead, it was like, nah, Gramps, the industry has changed. Focus on singles, focus on virality, focus on etc. For most folks, it is a numbers game. That's fine for them, but I would rather put out something more substantial that I feel is getting out good info that I can be proud of. I want to see more underground acts that are able to empower themselves, and we can finally let this I need to get signed mentality die with the old industry. Okay? That is not what this is going to be about. If you are looking for tips and tricks on how to get signed, there are a million other podcasts out there for you. Okay? That is not what you should be focusing on, in my opinion. You should be focusing on yourself, your voice, your story, what makes you, you. Because a label doesn't usually care about what makes you, you. They care about what they can make you into. Or at least that's what they used to care about. They used to be about development, right? And now they're looking for somebody that already has the audience, somebody that's already gone viral, somebody that has done the legwork that they don't need to do anymore, so that they can take you and then all of a sudden package you up in whatever the hell they want to do. Hey, you're going to do a Kwanzaa album with Kid Rock. Like, why the hell would anybody agree to that? But you signed a contract with the label, so that's what you got to do now. It's an interesting mentality, the old industry, and it helped a lot of people who were super talented artists that I am very glad I had the opportunity to listen to their music and to hear the stories that they had to tell. And that wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for the old system and the old labels. Like they say, most of the songs that you've ever heard are because of the music industry. It's because labels exist. Now, is that most of the songs that were ever written? No, not by a long shot. Most of the songs ever written, you have never heard. That's just a fact. The other thing that really upped the urgency for this podcast is the rise in music created by AI and the agonizing effect that streaming is having on the lives of musicians, crew members, independent venues, and all of us who are wondering what the hell is going on and what we can do about it. I know that there are folks out there that are telling you not to worry about AI. Oh yeah, everybody's using AI. All the top this, all the top that. Look, man, we've gotten to a place in the music industry where because of Pro Tools, because of streaming, because of trusting algorithms and numbers and all of this stuff, using feedback from a machine rather than trusting your gut or listening to an audience or anything like that. Instead, it's like, well, you need to do better with this demographic. And, you're doing all right. We're not getting people down from the top of the funnel into the such and such. Like it's all just a marketing screw fest, right? So that's what it's all geared towards. And everything has to sound super meticulous. You need intro, verse, chorus, bridge, chorus. Maybe not even that. Songs are getting shorter and shorter because we have no attention spans anymore. Except somehow for podcasts. Podcasts need to be like hours and hours long. But a song needs to be less than 3 minutes again. It's like the 1950s all over again. Super short, little easily digestible pop song. Don't bore us, get to the chorus. That's what they say. And then with being able to highlight everything and you hit quantize and auto-tune and all this other stuff that's happened in the last couple decades, now everything sounds literally the same. Where there used to be, there was a uniqueness that was celebrated. Yes, there were times that like a band would break through. The suits at the label would be like, oh, I have no idea why this works the way that it works. Let's just sign fucking 20 bands that sound exactly like them. And maybe you will be able to achieve the same thing. And for them, the dirty secret about the labels is that if they drop you, that's a tax write-off for them. That's an investment that didn't pan out. They can write it off and they are fine. That whole advance that you have spent maybe multiple albums, so many years trying to recoup, and you just end up further and further and further in the hole, they can just write it off and they're done with it. Where I've had so many friends that they get dropped by the label and then they have to move back in with their parents. They have to sell all the cool gear that they bought, all their dream gear that they bought with the advance. It's so soulless and so crushing, but their uniqueness was rewarded to a certain extent. It was like, oh, we haven't seen that before. But now it's like, we want everything that we have seen before because the next thing is right on the pipeline and you're forgotten. Just forgotten in no time. And now with AI, oh yeah. So let me tell you guys, for those of you who don't know, if you are a musician, you're a songwriter, you use what is known as a digital aggregator to upload to DSPs, digital service providers. What the hell is that? So if you've heard of CD Baby, if you've heard of TuneCore, if you've heard of DistroKid, you pay a fee sometimes, or there's a membership thing or whatever. Basically, they are the gatekeeper. You upload your song using their service, They are able to take that song and they send it to Spotify, Apple Music, Tidal, all these places, right? All these streaming platforms, digital service providers, DSPs. So, in the fine print with the aggregators, DistroKid, CD Baby, if you use their service, you are actually giving the DSPs permission to train their AI on your music. I'm going to tell you that again. You are giving Spotify permission to train their AI on all of your art. Everything that you upload to that service, you're letting robots listen to it, figure it out, label it, break it all apart, and copycat the shit out of it. And then now what we found is Spotify is doing, they took a page right out of the Amazon playbook. All right. So Amazon, I'm not going to get political. Amazon was a marketplace, still is technically, even though they're doing lots of other stuff. It was basically, it started as a bookstore, but an online bookstore, so you didn't have to drive to the bookstore. You could find rare books and stuff and have it sent directly to you. Then they started branching out from other products so that any manufacturer, anybody who produces goods around the world would have a global audience for their goods. So they could sell their wares to whoever on the internet, right? And Amazon was just a marketplace. But then they started investing a lot into being a manufacturer also. So they started producing products themselves. So then if your product that you use Amazon to promote to the world, if your product does really well, Amazon can copy, make a dupe of that product. They can push your product way back in their search results and put the dupe up front so that they make more money. I mean, they control the algorithm, they control the search results. Why wouldn't they put their own products first? Why wouldn't they bury yours? Right? You know, there's a certain amount of expense involved in producing goods, even if it's in another country and then shipped over. But an AI song, that's super cheap. That's super quick. You can do that in seconds, right? So that costs really nothing. Why wouldn't they do it? Why wouldn't they make all the money? Why wouldn't they just copy your song? If your song does really well, they'll just have robots copy it. They'll bump you off the playlist, put the robot version of the song on the playlist, because most people don't know the difference anyway. It's just background stuff. They're just playing music while they're doing whatever. They're not taking the CD home or the album home and pulling it out and setting it down, and you have to flip it over, or, you know, it's giving you something to read while you're listening to it, the lyrics or whatever. Like, we used to be involved in the process. And the cool part where bands would like thank all the other bands that were inspiring to them or that they've toured with. So you could read that and you'd be like, oh man, now I got to check this out and check this out and check this out. Because you couldn't just pay 10 or 20 bucks a month and then have all of recorded music. Like, you had to seek things out. You had to save up. If you were a poor kid like me, you had to save up and be like, all right, I've got 20 bucks. What am I going to buy with this? And then you would go to the record store and narrow it down. All right, is it going to be this one? Is it going to be this one? Like, I heard this one was really good, but I really like this last album by this guy. And so there was something involved with that. And then that, I understand that led to a lot of people being cheated because the industry would sign bands that had like 1, 2, 3 songs. They fill the rest in with bullshit. They pump one main song out that they get you hooked on. They know, the science behind all that. So they get you hooked on the song. The album comes out. You're like, oh, I love that song. I'm going to get the album. That song, maybe one other, is all you like. The rest of it is garbage. You wasted all that money. And that's why, going one song at a time started to make sense. Anyway, AI, it's coming for you. If you don't think that it's coming for you, guess what it is? It's coming for all sentient labor on Earth. We're going to have these discussions, you guys. We're going to have all these discussions about the industry, and I'm going to try and hold people to task too. So I'm going to be reaching out to DistroKid and Spotify and all these folks and see what sort of representative they want to send my way. All right. Now we get into the background, sort of. So I started getting gigs in the music business in the late 90s. Yeah, Unc. At the height of the recorded music industry, which is true. CDs, all of that was at its peak in like 99, 2000, which is when I was coming up. My dad had been a bassist in a few popular Inland Empire bands in the 1970s, and I grew up around musicians and their gear. Even my imaginary friends were in a band together, and I would daydream about little concerts that they would play. And they could shrink down, and then the band would set up like on the hatchback of my parents' car, and I would be in the back seat, and I could just watch them. Live music was a big thing in my family, music in general, and a brand new channel called MTV was always on at home. My parents would call up and win concerts on the radio, and I was usually too young to go with them. But luckily, some family friends lived on the next block, and they had a detached garage where they would set up and jam at backyard parties. So I got to see friends and family play music together all the time. It was very inspiring. And it was crazy to like, oh, we're going to do this song. You want to come up and do it? Oh, yeah. Like the Rolodex of music that people will have in their head and who knows what. And it was amazing to me. And it was amazing to me that these songs that I had been hearing since I was a kid could be reproduced by people who weren't the original artists, like family members and other human beings could do this. That blew my mind. Being a musician myself wasn't the dream at first. I always used to fantasize about throwing parties, well, concerts really, and what bands I would ask to play, but I really wanted to get into acting. I also wanted to do football. That movie Rudy was very inspirational. Anywho, but yeah, acting, I went for that for sure. Thankfully, my folks were encouraging. It was mainly theater for me. I only auditioned for one movie when I was in the 4th grade, a Burt Reynolds film called A Cop and a Half. But I did not get a call back on that one. There wasn't any agent or anything. It was just an open call that I think I heard on like a morning radio show. So like there was a line down the block and stuff. My parents were troopers. Let's see. That was also the year that everyone in my class had to play that little plastic recorder flute thing. And I first learned about the chromatic scale. Yeah, 4th grade. The little... The next year I started playing saxophone. I wanted to play drums. My dad wanted me to play drums. I wanted to play drums too. But when I saw that we were only getting like a little practice pad and not a full-blown Neil Peart rotating drum kit, I decided to go for the next best thing that could make the loudest noise. Plus, Lisa Simpson was a saxophonist. And yeah, Lisa Simpson, she's clearly an icon. Like, why wouldn't I want to be? My dad got a side gig with Ontario Music, the same local music store that we rented my expensive-ass saxophone from. He started doing guitar repairs for them on our dining room table. My mom loved that. On weekends and when he got home from the auto shop that he worked at. He ended up getting seriously injured at work and had surgery, but there was a program at the time that would help you start a new business if you couldn't physically work in your old profession anymore. I think it was maybe workman's comp or something. It was like, you're too broken to do that job. To like try and repair you to do that, it would cost us less to fix you up to do something that you actually want to do. Let's help you out. So that's how Parnell Guitar and Amp Repair got started. And had I remembered when I started this place that that's how all of that went down, I probably would have approached this a little bit differently. Instead, I was like, oh, my dad started his own business and there were people helping out all the time. Like, it'll be fine. No, totally different. At this point, I was still doing community theater and school plays, but had started teaching myself guitar. With saxophone, I had already learned how to read sheet music, and I wasn't interested in the guitar instruction books. Not at all. But there were music magazines galore at the time, and some of them would teach you riffs and solos from popular rock songs. Sometimes I'd learn new chords just by mimicking the finger positions of famous guitarists in concert photos. I'd be looking through like Hit Parader or something and be like, what are they doing with their fingers right there? Try it out and go, oh man, that's sick. Let's see. My folks had a great album collection, still do, but I started buying cassettes to take in my room and train myself to learn songs by ear. By 8th grade, I was playing bass in a garage band. We made a couple tapes of silly songs, but we broke up before high school. I remained friends with Tyler, the guitarist, and we kept collaborating together. I also made a one-off cassette my freshman year, kind of like a solo album, very goth metal, with preset keyboard drum patterns and me attempting to sing and play all the instruments. No 4-track or anything fancy. I used 2 boom boxes on top of each other to make the recording. So I think the bottom one had like a built-in microphone, and then the top one had a microphone input. It was like a little 1/8-inch microphone, or like a headphone jack that said microphone on it. And I had like an old dictation microphone from like the 80s or something, like little tiny thing with a molded cable, came down to an 1/8-inch plug. And that's actually the microphone that we used in 8th grade to record the garage band. We would tape that to the handle of a sledgehammer and use that as a mic stand. And that one microphone would pick up everything in the garage. So you would start with a drum intro, because we needed to start with drums so that way we knew what the tempo was. And it would sound really cool. And then when the guitar would kick in, the volume would just drop like crazy. And then you had to sing on top of it through the same microphone. So the vocals were loud and annoying. And then you could kind of hear muffled instruments and stuff in the back. It was awful. But I would use that mic to record like direct to an amp or vocals or whatever. And the built-in microphone on the bottom boombox, I would use that to record live. So I would record myself playing guitar along with the keyboard drums, just hit dun, 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 dun. I would do that on one tape, right, on the bottom, and then I'd put that on the top, rewind it, play. I picked up a bass now, right? Guitar comes in, then I record onto a different tape on the bottom, record the bass. Then play the tape really loud while I played bass and recorded that onto another tape. Repeat the process and keep layering it all onto the final cassette. For the sleeve, like I took out one of my other cassettes and I set it on a piece of paper and traced it out and then cut it out of the blank piece of paper and then folded it where the little tape folds were, made sure that everything was the right dimensions, and then hand drew the cover, which was Orko. It was like a little magician dude from He-Man, and he was playing guitar. And I brought it to school, was showing kids, like, hey, check it out, man, I made a tape. No way to play it for anybody, you know. I didn't have a Walkman. It was like, listen to this. Like the guys on Venice Beach. Instead, I was just kind of showing off, I guess. And then there was a kid who was like, hey, my brother's a DJ. Let me take that tape from you. And I was like, oh, okay. And they probably listened to like one song, was like, fuck this. Yeah, no idea what happened to it. My band homie Tyler from the 8th grade had a computer at his parents' house, which had AOL on there, and we used to wreak havoc together in the chat rooms. But we also figured out how to sample little bits of songs from our parents' CD collections. Like I liked 90s hip-hop and that sort of stuff, but I had no idea what the history of hip-hop was and, you know, what break beats and all that stuff. Like the early days of sampling, I was clueless to that. But that's essentially what we were doing. We were listening for any section of the song that had just drums by themselves. Something that was enough that we could get a loop out of it and then speed it up, slow it down, do whatever. With a tiny little 1/4-inch to 1/8-inch adapter from Radio Shack hooked up to an instrument cable, we could record guitar directly into the audio input jack on the back of the computer hard drive, which by the time we got a computer at my house and my dad saw me doing that, he freaked the fuck out. He was like, you're going to blow that shit up. It was expensive. I didn't, okay? It was fine. Windows 95 had an early version of the sound recorder app where you could mix audio files together and add effects. So we used that app. We would just layer things up. We could speed it up, slow it down, add echo, add, distortion, do whatever. Before long, we got really good at it. Looking back on it now, it would have been a great idea if we had decided to form some kind of DJ duo that also incorporated live instruments into our set. But we really wanted to have a band, And we struggled with trying to make that a reality for basically all of high school. Because we would use a computer to make these songs, and then you give a tape to somebody. It's like, can you play this? And they'll be like, I guess, yeah, but that's not how everybody else was doing it, you know? As soon as we were old enough to go to concerts on our own, my friends and I were hitting the all-ages rock clubs in Hollywood. I absolutely loved the Sunset Strip and also local IE venues like the Showcase Theater in Corona, the Glass House in Pomona. Sometimes we even drove out to Vegas to see shows at the Huntridge Theater or up to Velvet Jones in Santa Barbara. During that time, my dad managed to get the repair shop registered with the National Association of Music Merchants, or NAMM for short. Every winter, there's a huge trade show where everyone in the musical instrument industry shows off their new products, and a lot of the big-name companies will bring their endorsed artists to take pics and sign autographs with NAMM members. I got to meet so many of my heroes at the Anaheim Convention Center and show pictures of us to my friends at school the next week. The year after I graduated high school, I was addicted to the live music scene like never before. I was building websites for bands. I was heading up street teams and doing promo drops. I was constantly in chat rooms and on message boards to keep up with the latest happenings and see what concerts I wanted to attend. Magazines too, like Mean Street, BAM Magazine, all the ads that would have the upcoming shows, and find the ones that were all ages. And, I didn't have a car most of the time, so it was trying to convince my buddy Troy to fire up the Bug and let's go to Hollywood. Or it was wild days, and there were so many cool bands at the time that were trying to get going. Like it was a really, really amazing scene. When I went to NAMM that year, I brought along a CD sleeve from one of my favorite bands of that era called Human Waste Project. Still a huge favorite. The first song, as soon as I heard it, I was like, what is this? Who is this? Can I borrow this? Let me just have this CD for a couple days. I knew that the guitarist, Mike Tempesta, was a Schecter artist, and at that time was with the band Powerman 5000. So at the very least, I knew I'd be able to get his autographs. What I did not expect was also meeting two more Human Waste Project members, lead singer Amy Echo and drummer Scott Ellis, who were in a new group with members from another one of my faves, a band called Snot. So Jamie Miller, drummer for Snot, and then eventually Bad Religion, was the guitarist after originally playing bass. Imagine trying to memorize all of that and then say it. Like, why do I write such long, descriptive sentences? Their new band was called The Start. Oh, hey, look at that. I'm wearing the hoodie for those who aren't watching this. And I was one of many young alt kids who spent time on their online message board all the time. In those days, I used to wear a bright green beanie that said Puke across the front, which was a nickname that I had earned whilst partying in high school. It was also the name that I used when I posted on the band's message board, and Scott was the first one to put it together. And he goes, "Does that say Puke?" I was like, "Yeah." And he goes, "Wait, are you on our message board?" And I was like, "Yeah, that's me." And he goes, "We're family." And he gave me this huge hug. Everybody at the NAMM show has to wear an ID badge that says their name and the name of the company they're representing. My badge said Parnell Guitar and Amp Repair on it. So they asked if I knew how to fix guitars. I wasn't an expert or anything. I'd only learned a few things from hanging around my dad's shop after school. I knew enough. I knew that I knew enough. I knew that I knew more than my friends, right? So of course I said yes. I was not in the business. I was going to community college, taking music classes, and hated it. One of them was a computer music class, and literally we had a floppy disk that we would bring to and from class and insert the floppy disk into the keyboard that we were using to compose everything. And our final was going to be turning in the floppy disk to the professor or whatever. No. So I dropped out. I dropped out of community college, and I had been working at the Subway sandwich restaurant on the corner of Arrow Highway and Indian Hill in Claremont, which was also the town where Rhino Records was, one of my favorite record stores growing up. And I'd quit. I dropped out of school. I quit my job. I was hanging around my parents' house, and I was like, what the hell am I going to do? One of the most exciting days of my life was a few weeks later when I got an email from Amy Echo asking me if I wanted to be their guitar tech. We met up at their rehearsal space. I got acquainted with the band and their gear. The first show that I did with them was at the Galaxy Theater in Santa Ana. And after that, we did a West Coast tour in a van and trailer. They were signed to a subsidiary of Interscope Records, and in the summer of 2001, I did my first national tour with them as they opened for Sugar Ray. This tour was in sports arenas and large theaters and military bases. The biggest shows were at military bases. It was like 25, 30, 50,000 people out there. We were traveling on a tour bus. I couldn't believe it. I was only 19 at the time. Do the math. And these awesome people took a huge chance on me. We were on the road for probably 3 to 4 months doing that tour, and I came home a changed man. The world also changed after we got home. I was living with the same homie from 8th grade in the same house where we first learned audio recording, and that's where I was when the Twin Towers fell. I had just seen them for the first time only a couple months before, and now they were gone. A month after that, the first iPod was released. So everything changed, you guys. Everything. Not just the politics of the world, but the music world as well. The label wouldn't pay for me to tour with the band anymore, so it wasn't until after they got dropped that we started working together again. That's when the Start went back to their DIY punk rock roots and started blazing their own trail. The industry was collapsing, and I basically got to be a fly on the wall watching it all go down and learning how bands do things the grassroots way instead of with label support. And that was invaluable information. And then I didn't even realize how many of those bands that got deals in the 90s had spent all that time in like the punk rock scene doing all the DIY stuff. I had no idea that the street teams that I was on, that like these bands had figured out the street team thing before anybody else. And then Streetwise and these other companies like basically just copied and cashed in off of it. Because back then it was like you had your mailing list, right? So at the merchandise table, people would buy CDs or tapes or whatever, t-shirts and all that stuff. And then you're a big fan, so you put your name and you put your address on the mailing list, and the band would send you stuff. Cool little cards or whatever, stickers usually. And some of the bands had figured out that a good way to support each other and promote each other and have each other's backs was, what if we start including each other's promo in our mailing list drops? So, you know, if you were a Human Waste Project fan, for example, in the mailing list drop, you would get like Deftones stickers, and, you know, you would find out about these other bands, not just from the liner notes, but because they were getting propped up in other ways. Or, you know, I remember getting the Man Will Surrender album produced by Garth Richardson, and the only reason that I knew that that band existed was because Scott, the drummer from Human Waste, was wearing a Man Will Surrender shirt in a photo shoot. And I saw the album at Rhino Records, and I was like, oh, I'm buying that. So I toured with the Start off and on for another 6 years. They shared stages with bands like Garbage, The Offspring, Alkaline Trio, The Used, Goldfinger, Coheed and Cambria, many, many others. Tours that I didn't do, Weezer, Incubus, like... I also did a few other tours with local IE bands, like a band called Sloth. They were managed by Kevin Lyman, who helped found the Warped Tour, now Vans Warped Tour. And Kevin's old office in Montclair, I graduated from Montclair High, that's where Sloth used to jam, and his office was like 10 minutes away from where I lived at the time. So we used to go there and hang out, like make stickers on the sticker machine, and it was fun. He had some really cool posters in his office too. life took a few interesting turns, and I ended up on the East Coast with my folks in Niagara Falls. So those of you who have my phone number, that's why it's a Western New York phone number. Eventually, I moved to Idlewild, present town, at the request of the same homie from 8th grade who by then had 2 boys and was interested in getting back into music. I had been jamming with some cousins in New York, but nothing was really solidifying, so I moved 3,000 miles to live in a laundry room in the woods. We came up with some really cool stuff, some of our best, but it was the same thing as before, like high school. We wanted a full band and not a duo, and that was impossible. We struggled with it for a couple years, and by the end of 2007, I suddenly moved to the UK with a girl whom I was dating. I ended up getting a gig with a band called Elliot Minor, who were signed to Warner UK. Their self-titled debut had a top 5 single, and we did quite a few tours together. Mostly UK, Ireland. We did a festival in Japan together, a few things in like Paris and Amsterdam. Then the second album sales equated to the dreaded sophomore slump. The band went their separate ways, as did I and the girl, and I found my way back to sunny Southern California for what was supposed to only be a 2-week visit. I wanted to try something new, and the only rule that I had for myself was not to repeat any of the same mistakes as before and go in a new direction. It wasn't just same mistakes. I didn't want to do any of the same shit. So if somebody offered me a guitar tech job, I was going to say no. If any of the stuff that I had tried to do before, if it was too similar to the moves that I had already tried to make, wasn't going to do it. Tyler and I met up again. He was in Oceanside at that point. But it was the same issue as before, not being able to assemble a live band. I had to get some stuff out of my ex's house in Idlewild, including a guitar and an amp, and it just so happened that some friends up here had asked me to get together and jam. They had previously been in a local band together, and in those days, with their previous band, they had asked me to pretend to be their manager. So I taught them how to book their own tour. They found another town to move to, found it on that tour, and they were off to make their dreams come true. That band broke up, but a couple of the guys were going to try reuniting, and they invited me to see if I would be a good fit for whatever was going to happen. So yeah, we jammed. It was instant chemistry, and I moved in immediately. We booked our first local show before we even had a band name. The parameters we gave for choosing the band name were pretty simple. We knew that it had to be 3 syllables for optimum crowd chanting. People get a giggle out of that one, but that's how into it we were. We were like, oh yeah, we need to think of a band name that is going to be chanted by thousands of fans, you know? So what are we going to do? And 3 syllables, I was like, Pantera, Pantera. Like 3 syllables is optimum chant, you know? So we kicked around a few names after practice one night. Pitch Black Road, PBR for short, Dead Man's Curve. Then I said, what about Throw the Goat? And it was decided. Okay, I'm not going to get into the details of that band's whole story right now. To be perfectly honest, there are some points of contention that have never been publicly addressed. And I would like to give Mike the opportunity to come on this podcast and discuss it with me. We haven't really spoken much since he quit the band and left town, and the minimal communication that we've managed to have hasn't been very friendly. So that's where it's at. That's the truth. I know that I don't talk about it publicly. I know that Mike's never said anything. At least, not in public. Behind my back, for sure. But that's a different story. Without getting into too much detail, I will say that Throw the Goat was the perfect vehicle for me to apply all the things I'd learned from 10 years of touring the world. Our first tour ever was a UK tour. Like, who the hell does that as an unsigned band? We did. And it was pretty rad. I am very proud of all the accomplishments that we made. It's not all about me. Like, especially that first album, the way that all of that came together, getting those songs together and everything, at least before we got into the studio. And that's going into the studio was when everything fell apart, for sure. And I cannot listen to that first album. Not because they're bad songs, but because that's not us. That's not how our band sounded. Like, that is Pro Tools all the way. I'm very proud of all the accomplishments we made, and hopefully I'll get to share the full story with you soon. We'll see. I'm giving Mike the, what do they call it? The opportunity of first refusal or something. Around that time that Throw the Goat had its final lineup change, I got asked to join the production crew at the Coachella Festival. This wasn't stage or artist related. It was actually with the Golden Voice F&B department, which was headed at the time by Nick Adler. So back in the day, Nick was the manager of Snot, and we met when The Start played at the Roxy on Sunset, which is a famous club that Nick used to run. The lead guitarist for Snot, Mikey Doling, what up, Mikey? He was also on the F&B crew for Golden Voice, and he was the one who asked Nick to hire me. And I turned him down at first. I was like, Coachella, like, I'm not from LA, bro. Coachella is a dirty word. For those of us out here in this part by the Coachella Valley. But, it was a very eye-opening experience. I eventually said yes. We had a gig, actually. We had Throw the Goat had a 420 gig booked. And that's another reason why I turned it down. I was like, bro, I'm not canceling the show. And he said, no, just do it. Trust me. So I asked the guys, and if they would have said, no, we're playing, I would have said no to Coachella. But the guys were like, it sounds like a good opportunity. Go for it. So I did. It was a very eye-opening experience to see how the sausage gets made at one of the most famous music festivals in the world. And I was able to apply that knowledge in Idlewild after a very devastating wildfire in 2018, the Cranston Fire. A handful of others and myself put together a free music festival in Idlewild that raised over $40,000 in donations for local disaster victims. For everybody that's been asking, we're talking about doing it again, but I reached out. So since the 2020 census, Idlewild got switched from District 3 of Riverside County to District 4. So we're now in Manny Perez's district, not in Chuck Washington's district. So I reached out to Manny Perez, told him about the Idlewild Strong Festival, and I was like, hey, what if instead of being reactive, we end up being proactive and we bring back the festival, but we use it as a way to create like a local disaster relief fund for the mountain communities, and we pay into it through the festival. So that way we got a little nest egg, because it's not if it happens again, it's unfortunately when, right? So it would be nice to have like our own kind of FEMA where we don't have to do these after the fact fundraisers for people who lost everything. You know what I mean? He really, really liked the idea. We're still working it out. I need to put a board together. There's way too much stuff that I'm working on, you guys. But yeah, that's where we're at with that. And personally, my involvement with the festival, I booked it was 80 plus acts at 12 different venues throughout the town for all 3 days of the festival. So a free festival, 3 days long, 12 venues, 80 something performers or bands or whatever. And we made over 40K from a free festival. Like, that's pretty good, you guys. So lately, I am still making music. I have my own music venue / recording studio, which I mentioned at the beginning. I'm in the green room right now. I've been booking all the bands here for going on 5 years. Our first sound guy, Chris Mitchell, was hugely instrumental in getting us going. Very much so. Chris was one of the front of house guys that I got to do Idlewild Strong, because I also had to secure the back line and get audio engineers and all of that. Chris helped out both years. His stage did really, really well. Some of the biggest donations that we got was from the stage that Chris was working. And when I opened the studio, Chris reached out and was like, hey, what's the plan? What are you doing here? And I told him kind of what I was thinking. And he was like, well, check it out, bro. I've got tons of gear that's in storage right now. Like, I can hardly afford right now to pay my storage bill to keep all this gear in there. And you've got lots of space in here. So what if I take all my stuff out of storage, bring it in here? It actually gets some use out of it. I can sell equipment from here easier than I could sell it from a container. So why not do that? And that worked out really well. Like, we had a lot of really cool pro gear here for a while. And we got to be known as the place that sounded the best, had like the best live sound within like 50 miles, which, when you're on top of a mountain, that's cheating a little bit. But still, I stand by it. So yeah, Chris Mitchell, hugely instrumental in getting us going. Unfortunately, Chris had to move back to Tennessee. But he's doing great. We talk. He's out there holding it down, and I'm now holding it down as the house audio engineer. We recently got approval by the IRS to legally become a church. So now we're known officially as the Audio Wild Church of Divine Vibes. You probably have some questions about that. So if you want to know more about our metaphysical musical mission, you can check out our Substack. I'll make sure to throw some links down there. So the full story of ACDV and how that came about, that's going to be a different episode. But that's where we're at now. And that's pretty much the story. So I've worn a lot of different hats, and I've seen this biz from many angles. From being a crew member to a producer, a promoter, a manager, an artist, and lots in between. I've seen everything from the heyday to the hey, what the hell are these days that we're in now. I've met tons of people along the way, and everyone always has incredible stories to share. My goal is to bring those stories to you in a way that is informative and inspiring, not just from the artists, but also from the people behind the scenes who rarely get interviews. I want to talk to the techs, the audio engineers, the booking agents, venue owners, publicists, tour managers, photographers, like I mentioned, everyone else who is trying to navigate this ever-changing industry. So, I hope you have a better understanding of this guy named Puke and are interested in hearing more from me and the friends that I've made along the way. I'm not sure yet how often new episodes are going to drop. I'm not entirely sure who all of my guests are going to be, but if you would like to see more, then please like and subscribe. Hopefully, I don't know yet. I feel like this went pretty well. I feel like I'm going to be able to edit this into something that won't make me cringe too much. I'll be able to get it out there and never do this again. Never again. I can see why nobody goes this route from the beginning. So, yeah, if you want to be interviewed, which mainly I'm going for people in the music industry, and it's mainly about storytelling. Not like useless storytelling, but like stories that are going to be informational and inspirational. Infotainment really is the buzzword that I'm looking for, because that's why I check out these podcasts, is I'm looking for something that's that little spark, that little click that goes, yeah, we should do this, let's try this. And that's what I'm hoping to be able to do for others, because I have one-on-ones with people all the time. Or I'll post about something on social media and people are like, wait, what? I had no idea about that. And to me, it's like, I think that this is just common knowledge and everybody already knows this stuff. But no, it would behoove me to share more of this information with more people, because then maybe we can actually figure out what the hell we're doing, and we can expose the people that are just putting their hands in artists' pockets. Like, there's always been a lot of hands in our pockets. You know what I mean? Like, anybody who knows the story of like how TLC went bankrupt, but still being like a chart-topping group, and it's because you have to pay so many other people. The advance that we talked about, all of that stuff. You have to pay the manager, you have to pay the agent, you have to pay the business manager, you have to pay all these other, so many people get paid before you ever see a dime. And that was one of the things that made me feel secure as a crew member, even though back in the day, people would be like, ugh, you're a roadie? Like, I hated that fucking word. I still kind of do. So to some people, roadie is like anybody who tours with the band is a roadie. But to me, I like to be called a tech because it was like skilled labor. I knew people who their only job was to like pick stuff up, move it here, whatever. That's like a glorified gopher, basically a traveling gopher. And that to me was a roadie. Like I wouldn't lump a tour manager in with roadie. You know what I mean? But so many other people would. Anyway, what made me get over that, which is also why I didn't want to get into food service, because there was no such thing as the celebrity chef when I started working in kitchens. There was like Julia Child and Yan Can Cook and the Frugal Gourmet and maybe Emerald, and that was it. So if you worked at a restaurant, you were like the help. There was nothing glamorous about it. I did not want that job, but I have a ton of restaurant experience now. But yeah, that's something. What made me feel better about it was knowing that like I, at the end of the day, was basically making more per hour than the band, because you're getting paid for the entire trip. And you really only have to work, like the band themselves, the work that they do is just however long their set is. So if it's a 30, 45 hour long set or whatever, that's how long your workday is. And the rest is just getting to and from the venues. So I learned a lot, you guys. I learned things that I've considered putting into like an online course. I might still do that. I thought about teaching an online course about DIY touring, because not only did I experience that as a guitar tech or a roadie, whatever you want to call it, I experienced it that way in the late 90s through 2000s. And then I experienced it from actually being in the band and booking the shows and doing international tours and stuff that way with no label support or anything. There's a lot that I was able to learn, and people don't really know the ins and outs. Like there's no college course that you can take that teaches you how to do DIY touring. Like, as far as I know, that doesn't exist. And academia hasn't really been my favorite thing in the world. I like to learn on my own. If any of you out there are like me and you would like to know more and hopefully be able to apply that to your own career, even if you're just a hobbyist and you're looking to up your game, there's going to be some valuable information that you're going to be able to get from this. Hopefully there's stuff that I've covered that you didn't even know. Hopefully I'm dropping truth bombs on you, right? Already, out the gate. Episode 1, you guys. That's it. Puke's podcast. My name is Puke. You can call me Brian. You can call me whatever you want. Okay? Thank you for joining me, and I will see you next time.